Hey guys, Dov here, back with another unit highlight, here today with the best in class for chariots, Flayers. Yep, I'm giving it to Flayers. Just as a quick reminder, if you guys are enjoying the series, feel free to like the video, it really helps out the channel, but without further ado, Flayers. I have been talking a lot about chariots recently, very controversially said that Scourge Runners are overrated, which I knew a bunch of people would overreact to, which is honestly kind of one of the reasons why I made the take, but I honestly stand by that take. I do think people tend to over-rely on them. They're still very, very strong. Probably one of the top 10 chariot units in the game. I don't know if I would even necessarily put it in the top 5. It's probably up there, but Doomflayers are, in my opinion, the best kind of chariot unit in the game, and they are definitely chariots. So other comparable units, you know, the lion chariots, other things, they have a lot going for them, but the Doomflayers, in my opinion, have a few things. First is armor. They've got 90 armor here, and then of course when they're in melee they get this buff, which gives them an extra 24 armor, means in melee they are effectively very tanky. Likewise, their animations, which is kind of a hard thing to define, right? That's not something you really see on the stat card. Their animations are very, very strong, and also have tiny hitbox. Look at that. None of those arrows connected from Glade Riders. We've got Hagbane Tips here, Wild Hunters of Kurnos. We've got some Eternal Guards on the front line, Glade Guards with Starfire Shafts, Orion leading the way, and a Waystalker, Branch Wraith for the caster. This is Hadriz playing Skaven here, and spoiler alert, he won the Land of the Living Flash tournament. This is one of the preliminary round games that he played with Skaven. He was going all in. There was a prize for using certain armor-piercing chariot units. I wanted to collect a bunch of replays from different ones, and he went all in with the Skaven Doomflayers, which I totally agree with. Skaven, very strong faction. Doomflayers, very strong unit. So we're going to see them in action here today. Anti-infantry, armor-piercing damage, 40 charge. Not the best stats in the world, but they are pretty fast. 72 speed is on the quick end. There are other faster chariots like the lions, but right now the mortars are firing in, just doing horrendous damage across the line for the elves. Wood elves with their low HP in general means they will take horrible damage from those mortars. So we're going to zoom in close as the Flayers do something which on paper they should not do. They're going to charge Wild Riders. And now these guys are not anti-large, right? On paper you're like, oh, they're anti-infantry, but here the Wild Riders' charge gets broken by the Skaven Slaves. This is basically the most cost-effective these chaff units can be. Oh, they're actually Clan Rats. But Clan Rat Spears rush in here also to support. So with support now, these Flayers, and again, I want you to pay attention to the animations that they do where they kind of spin around in circles. Means, number one, they're hard to hit because they kind of push their opponents back. You see, just like that, makes them hard to hit, and likewise, you know, they hit multiple targets on that swing around, and especially against something like cavalry, it's actually quite strong. And if we zoom out here, you'll see that Wild Hunters, you would think on paper, like elite charge, magic damage, anti-large. I mean, that's because magic damage doesn't really count for a lot here, but you see how well the Flayers are holding here, and up to 114 armor because of that passive buff they have while in melee. Already done a ton of damage. And, I mean, the Clan Rat Spears, the support units get routed off, but that's just fine. The Flayers are able to not only block with mass, which is very important. I mentioned in my Rat Ogre video that they're the main mass blockers, and a few of you pointed out in the comments that Flayers also exist, which is totally valid. Flayers are another kind of blocking detachment you can use, but there you can see surprisingly good offensively against targets that they really feels like they shouldn't be. Anyway, if we take a look at the rest of the battlefield here, you can see Wood Elves already pretty far behind on the balance of power. And, yeah, it's not looking too great for them, honestly. So, yeah, just kind of taking a look here, the fact that these mortars have been so protected, and the Flayers are kind of a part of that, right? There are 3 Flayers is pretty heavy against Wood Elves, especially, who, interestingly enough, Wood Elves, I would say, are perhaps next to Skaven and Dwarfs the most vulnerable faction against chariots. Snitch in here assassinating this Branch Wraith, getting picked off pretty badly by various things, but Orion's also chatting in the front line, fighting a Hell Pit Abomination, has been for quite some time. An absolute beast, of course, but here he gets Deathmaster's Sigil. The Hell Pit's gonna crawl away there. And then Snitch and the Chariots come in again. The Flayers, look at this. Orion has quite a bit of mass, but they come in and they get this little surround. They're going to do their sweeping, circly attack animations. He just blows one up right there. No surprises, but at the very least, they're keeping him kind of busy here, pinned in. This one is terrified, somehow stuck. Could you imagine being this Flayer, like, stuck somehow to this other Flayer and you just can't get away? Oh, looks like the Terror route wore off. He's fine now. The rest of the Flayers also rush through. They're going to ball up around Orion and keep doing their little sweeping attacks. All the while, this Hell Pit's still pounding. So this one was relatively short. I do have another one from Hadris to show you guys to kind of talk a little bit more about Flayers. But the animations is the main thing I want you guys to pay attention to. Because that's something that on Chariots, most Chariots have pretty basic animations where like they'll charge in. Sometimes if they have monstrous mounts, the monsters will do a forward attack animation. But usually it's just like... the horses, I guess, too, sometimes do like a kicking attack animation. Oh, and then the guys on the sides do like a little sweep. But because of the way that the Flayers kind of push their opponents away and then like themselves move away, it means they're surprisingly hard to hit. And they, in practice, are much tankier than their stats would suggest. They are pretty squishy. We'll kind of do some comparisons in the late game. But look at this. This one Doomflayer, almost 3 chevrons gained throughout the course of the battle, even though they're primarily fighting large targets, right? Only 15 kills, actually, on them, so kind of insane when you stop and think about it. So, you know what, actually, this one I think will be long enough. I don't know. Well, maybe I'll squeeze in an extra replay. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, for Hadris here, one of the Flayers, 15 kills, 2 XP chevrons, as we saw. Hell Pit Abomination also did a lot of work against Orion. And, I mean, the Wild Hunters ended up getting 98 kills even in that small engagement. But the Flayers, with support there, still able to beat them. The Poison Wind Mortars also just absolutely running rampant all over this Wood Elf army here. And, yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and get to another replay. Why not? I haven't done a double cast in a while. Let's get to it. Now we're back with the second game. This time, Hadris facing off against Norska, which is not a faction you would necessarily think to bring Chariots against, because they have a pretty heavy monster presence. But let's see how they do. Hadris, of course, had to bring at least one for the challenge, so we've got one here. Hell Pit Abomination, Poison Wind Mortars, we've got Council Guard as well, Plague Priest, Snitch and the Assassin, plus Hell Pit Abomination, Plague Monk Censer Bearers, nice kind of niche choice against Norska. Speaking of armor-piercing chariot prizes, this over here, I believe, is Newport. He was going for it with the Marauder Ice Wolf chariots, also a very strong, underrated chariot, in my opinion, with Frostbite and 90-something speed. Yeah, I think they're the fastest, 95 speed. They're one of the fastest chariots in the game. It's basically impossible for most units to get away from them, but here, oh yeah, some chariot-on-chariot action. This is what we like, straight-up bumper cars. The Flayers come in and push the Ice Wolf chariots back. And also the mortars firing in, doing a little bit of friendly damage, but mostly just hitting various combatants here. Liber Bubonicus also being used right out the gates on Wolfric. Great job there by Lord Skrulk to point and say, you are sick now. But yeah, you can see the Flayers. It seems strange. Again, charging chariots with chariots is something that's kind of janky to do in practice, but it works. We have a comparison, though. I guess this kind of gives us an opportunity to do a bit of direct comparison. 40 charge on the Doomflayers is relatively low compared to most chariots. 76 charge bonus on the Ice Wolves, for example, is a more typical chariot charge bonus stat line. But the animations, again, are where these guys really, really come into their own. They're much better at sustained combat than most chariots because of that. And honestly, the melee stat profile, I mean, attack and defense really are pretty much on par with other chariot units, which is why this is one of the ones I would say that's a little bit harder to get a grasp on. Like, you might say, just purely from looking at the stats on paper, there's no way Flayers could possibly be the best chariots, but really, again, in practice, because of the animations, that makes such a huge difference. So if we have a look here, so far, mortars are doing a good job kind of pressuring Norskans on various fronts. There are a lot of Skin Wolves here, though, for Norska. We've got Berserkers as well, regular Marauders, Shadow Famir, and you see how Hadris is kind of using this rock as part of his defensive line. So the Norskins are forced to kind of attack on both sides of it here. Very nice play. Absolutely legal to use terrain as long as it's not, you know, connected to the edge of the map. You're not technically line camping. The Ice Wolf Chariots come forward here. I'm not sure where the Flayers exactly got off to. Let's take a look. Lost track of the one unit I'm supposed to be featuring. Oh no, they're here still playing bumper cars. Okay. Oh no, that's the Norskin Chariot. Come on. No, they're right here. Holding off in the back for the time being. In this front line engagement, looks like a nice Rod of Corruption there from Lord Skrulk. Again, man, I love that Hadris is doing this. He's just using the Flayers to charge the other chariots. I love it. Absolutely love it. And using them to kind of block their movements. And you can see it's actually kind of working a little bit. Like, the Ice Wolf Chariots are somewhat getting through, but at the same time, like, Wolfric both and the Marauder Ice Chariots here are having a hard time. Rivalhide Talisman from the Skaven Assassin was debuffing their melee attack for a good amount of time as well, so the fact that you can use these chariots to do things in and a lot of the, I would say, the higher tier, quote-unquote, armor-piercing chariots, you can use in ways that you really, like, historically can't use chariots. If we're talking about our own history, like using them to fight directly heavy cavalry, or, you know, charging. I guess, did they play bumper cars in the Bronze Age? Who knows? One of you historians down in the comments, let me know. But regardless here, like, again, they're finally able to get free there, and now the Flayers are matched up against Skin Wolves, so they're here with the Assassin, matched up against Skin Wolves and some Berserkers. Of course, the Berserkers they'll do great against. And let's just see, like, there's an attack animation there, there's 1, 2, 3, okay, so maybe like 4 attack animations, whereas a regular chariot would have had quite a few more during that time. It's hard to, I'm not going to, like, go through and check, I guess, with other chariots right now in this video, but you get the picture. The movement of the animations, there we go, just like that. You see how it sends that one guy flying, like, you don't see the side sweep from a Chaos Chariot, or, you know, the horses on the front kicking someone in the head, sending them flying that far, right? Oof, absolutely brutal. Eventually they are going to lose out to the Skin Wolves. It's definitely a unit that will beat them, especially given the regeneration and everything, but yeah, they're able to do a surprising amount of damage there with the Assassin helping, of course. At this point, things are pretty close, though. Balance power, I say it, of course, as soon as I say that, balance power actually starts to move pretty heavily, as these Skin Wolves here get terrified by the Hell Pit Abomination, as the Skin Wolves rout. That does a significant amount of damage to the balance power there. I haven't really highlighted these Sensor Bears too much. They must have got some work, though. 25 kills and an XP Chevron. I actually think against the Skin Wolves, because they have magic damage to circumvent the physical resistance, maybe that's why Hadris takes them here. And likewise, like, countercharging into the Skin Wolves, because they have such a high charge bonus for an infantry unit. 34 is kind of ridiculous for a unit with 90 unit models. Basically, the more unit models the unit has, the better charge bonus is for it, right? But 34 charge for a unit with that many models means they're hitting for, what, like 70 to 80 weapon strength on the charge? With magic damage, bypass physical resistance and heavy AP too. Not that the Skin Wolves have much armor, but any that they do have will be bypassed. The Flayers charging in, providing that mobile rear charge penalty. And yeah, surprisingly, Norskin forces are still holding their leadership for the time being, mostly due to the sad boy Famir of Shadows with the one eye. I don't know why, to me, the Famir are just emo, but they are. I don't know. They're sad. They're all sad and forgotten by the Chaos Gods. But now, look at this. Yeah, the Flayers can also be used to chase units off in that 72 speed. Close enough. With the Skin Wolves 75, maybe. We'll see. Those Skin Wolves might end up coming back and eating what's left of the Flayers there. But yeah, you can see, even in a matchup and in many situations where you should not use chariots, I would say, most of the time, the Flayers work even in that situation, which is one reason. Now, I would say you don't want to over-rely on them. As with any chariot unit, if you go too heavily, you just don't have enough meat. And they definitely are always better with support, like we saw there in the last replay with the Clan Rats against the Wild Riders. Here, it's pretty good. Ice Wolf Chariot comes in. I think, yeah, the Skin Wolves did end up coming back and routing the Doomflayers, but that's fine. Ice Wolf Chariot as well, planning on featuring this one. They're underrated, very much so. They don't do armor piercing in melee, but they do have armor piercing missile attacks that, for whatever reason, only fire forward. It's a bit of a weird one, but 76 charge, great anti-infantry. Mainly, though, their upside is that 95 speed plus frostbite. Means that nothing can get away from them. But anyway, this video is not about those chariots. Not about these skin wolves or the sad boy, it's about the flares, which are gone. So at this point, I guess we should probably fast forward through this late game. Mortars use up the last of their ammunition, which actually shatters the javelins there. Skin wolves, likewise, I mean, they're quite strong. They do good damage against the hell pit, but the hell pit, because it also regenerates and has anti-large, is a good counter against them, right? They sort of counter each other in a way. And the skin wolves, without the leadership of the rest of their army, are just not going to be able to hang in here, and eventually will rout. So, great games from Hadris. Big thanks to him for flaying some people for me. And we see in this one, they didn't actually get the XP chevrons, but just being able to block up the wolf chariots and keep them from absolutely running rampant. Because, I mean, besides the Hell Pit and the Doomflayers, there was no other high mass units. Hadris didn't have any rat ogres, right? So, keep this chariot in check. You really only had the flares. So I guess it's not that you should use flares in that scenario, it's more that he had to, but they worked. I mean, it was enough. It limited the Ice Wolf chariots to only 58 kills and 2 XP chevrons, which could have been a lot higher, especially against like the weapons teams and other things. Pretty key there. So fun stuff. Great job by Newport, I have to say. I think he's a newer player to multiplayer. He sent me a message a while back, which I fortunately totally forgot to respond to, but definitely pretty solid, I have to say, for an initial showing. 113 kills for Wolfric the Wanderer there on the chariot. Very strong pick in this matchup, although, as we saw, vulnerable to Liber Bubonicus. And the rest of it, I mean, the Berserker is very solid in this matchup, like the Ice Wolf chariot as well. Even if there wasn't a prize of using it in this matchup, I'd still probably take it here. Anyway, fun stuff. That's it for today for flares. Oh no, I guess let's do some comparisons real quick of some of the higher tier kind of armor piercing chariots, and I will finalize my position here on why they're so good. And this is sort of where it looks like they're not as good and maybe even kind of bad for the cost if we compare them to some other similar chariots. Let's get the whole menagerie. Let's get got the lion chariots, of course, for high elves. So flares are 1,200, so 100 points cheaper than that. For the Dark Elves, of course, 1,100 for Gold 1 chariots, quite a bit cheaper. Same thing on the Razorgors are only 1,000, so that's pretty good. I believe Gorbeasts are also 1,200, yeah. So I guess we could maybe, there's an argument you could make to include boar chariots for the orcs, but leave that off for now. But 1,200, okay, so let's kind of have a look. The weapon strength is much higher, and again, this kind of goes back to the sustained combat potential of the Doomflayers. You'll see weapon strength is quite a bit higher than the lion chariots, basically worse in every other way, except more armor also, likewise, right? But slower. I mean, lion chariots also have missile resistance of 30%, right? Which kind of helps difference of armor. But it's mainly the charge bonus versus the sustained combat weapon strength. And that's going to be true of all of these chariots. Cold 1 chariots, of course, also have missile attacks. That kind of adds a little bit of damage potential there. But again, just like way lower HP and just worse charge, worse most things. I guess not that much worse charge than Cold 1 chariots. Razorgore chariots for sure. Worse charge, again, worse melee defense, less health. But they do more weapon strength, and their animations means in a sustained fight, they'll do much, much better. Same thing with Gorbeasts. Again, kind of all of them show the same, that the flayers are less charge-oriented than other chariots, but they have more weapon strength. And the animations is really the hidden thing, right? And the small hitbox, I guess I haven't really talked too much about that, but it's also probably the smallest hitbox for missiles out of any of these units that I'm comparing them to right now. So those two factors, plus the extra armor, with that armor buff active, I think it's actually, I guess, technically has less armor than the Gorbeast, but other than that, it has more than the rest of these. So that in and of itself, plus the small hitbox, the animations, and that massive melee weapon strength really set it apart from the other chariots. So that's my essay about flayers. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.